military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
Hello and welcome to One India. I am Akash and I hope that you are doing absolutely well. Now, nearly after 20 years, once again, Afghanistan is under the control of Taliban. Taliban rule over Afghanistan was challenged by America in 2001 after the September 11 attack. Who blamed the terrorist organization for helping Al-Qaeda to carry out those attacks. Now, the US forces were able to liberate a large part of Afghanistan from the Taliban's rule and were able to set up a democratic government under the rule of first Hamid Karzai and then Ashraf Ghani. Now, the US and its allies also helped the newly made government in making their own army and gave them the state-of-the-art arms and ammunition to fight the Taliban. But as the pressure in the US mounted over the government to get their army back to the states, USA signed a peace deal with Taliban and started to pack their bags.
Trying to bring about unity among Afghan leaders up across the board, and Afghans are going to have to decide their future.
And as soon as they started doing that, within a few days, Afghanistan fell back into the hands of Taliban. Now, many are saying that how could that be possible with the American-backed army, and that is what we're going to talk about today in this video, that how did the American-backed Afghan army fell within a day's time, and basically Taliban was able to take over Afghanistan without any resistance. But before that, as they say that when you go into a war, you should know a little bit about your enemy also. So let's go ahead and know a little bit briefly about the Taliban. Well, the word Taliban actually means a student in the Pashto language. The organization has been waging war or insurgency against the Western-backed government in Kabul since they were ousted of power in 2001. Now, the group was formed by Mujahideen fighters who fought the Soviet forces in the 1980s with the backing of the CIA. Now, emerging in 1994 as one of the several factions fighting the civil war, the Taliban gained control of much of the country in 1996 and imposed their very own version of Sharia or the Islamic law. Now, the group has been accused of enforcing brutal Sharia laws by doing public execution of those convicted of murder or adultery and amputation for those who are found guilty of theft. Now, men have to grow out their beards and women have to wear burqa, which basically covers the whole of their body. But after sheltering Osama bin Laden and some key Al-Qaeda figures in the wake of the September 11, 2001 attack on the World Trade Center in the New York, Taliban would fall after the US-led military coalition launched an offensive on October 7, 2001. Now, despite being out of the power, Taliban would continue a guerrilla kind of warfare against the Western-backed government and the US-led forces in the country. So that was a little bit of brief history about the Taliban, and now let's head into some of the main reasons that why Taliban was able to basically run over the Afghan army. Now, building the Afghan security apparatus was one of the key part of the Obama administration strategy, as it sought to find a way to hand over the security and leave nearly a decade ago.
Today I signed a historic agreement between the United States and Afghanistan that defines a new kind of relationship between our countries. A future in which Afghans are responsible for the security of their nation, and we build an equal partnership between two sovereign states. A future in which war ends and a new chapter begins.
But these efforts produced an army model in an image of the US military, an Afghan institution that was supposed to outlast the American war. While the future of Afghanistan seems to be more and more uncertain, there was one thing that was exceedingly clear. The United States' 20-year endeavor to rebuild the Afghan military into a robust and independent fighting force has failed. And that failure is now playing out in the real time as country basically fell to our Taliban within a matter of days. Now, it began with individual outposts in the rural areas where starving and ammunition depleted soldiers and police units were surrounded by Taliban fighters and promised safe passage if they would surrender, and left behind their equipment, slowly giving the insurgents more and more control of roads and then later districts. Now, as different positions started to collapse, the complaint was over and over the same thing, that there was no air support or they had run out of supplies and food. But even before that, the systematic weakness of the Afghan security forces was that on paper the force was numbered around 300,000 people, but in the recent days it has totaled around to be just 1/6 of that. Now, another main reason for the Afghan forces' failure was the West was looking to build a fully modern army with all the logistical and supply complexities that one requires. And this was actually very unsustainable without the United States and the NATO allies. Now, one more reason behind the fall of Afghan forces was the even deeper resentment to the Afghan leadership. Now, officials would often turn a blind eye to what was happening, knowing fully well that the Afghan forces' real manpower count was far more lower than that was on the books, and skewed by corruption and secrecy that was quietly accepted. Now, when the Taliban started building momentum after the United States' announcement of the withdrawal, it only increased the belief that fighting in the security forces, or basically fighting for President Ashraf Ghani's government, wasn't worth dying for.
We're determined to have unity, coherence, national sense of sacrifice, and will not spare anything.
After interviews, soldiers and police officials described moments of despair and feeling of abandonment, and we can basically see that how this happened as the forces fell like the deck of cards. Now, as the Taliban carried out an almost uninterrupted sweep of the country, their strength has been in question. Now, official estimates have long sat on somewhere between 50,000 to 100,000 fighters, but unfortunately now these numbers are even murkier as international forces and their intelligence capabilities have withdrawn from the country. Now, some US officials say that the Taliban number has swelled because of the influx of foreign fighters and aggressive campaign by the terrorist organization in the captured territory to get more and more fighters in their organization. Now, other experts say the Taliban has taken a bulk of their strength from Pakistan. So these were the few reasons that led to the downfall of Afghan forces and the rise of Taliban once again in the area. With the emergence of the terror outfit now, there are some serious concerns about human rights violation in the country, and Afghanistan once again becoming a safe haven for the extremists. With Taliban conducting a press conference and then many different things happening within the past 1 week, how people have been trying to come out of that country, refugees trying to get to the airport and everything. It is still very early to understand that how would Taliban 2.0 will rule Afghanistan, because let's be very honest, they are here to stay. Well, that's all we have in this video. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to One India News. And of course, if you want to share it, well, share it with your friends and family. And I will see you